I want to talk briefly about a word that I'm very fond of and what it means in the making of poems. And the word is hierarchy and hierarchical structures. And what I think of when I use that word is I think of a kind of triangular shape, in the way that many of you have taught essay writing to freshmen. And basically, what's at the peak of the hierarchical triangle when you're teaching essay writing to freshmen is the thesis statement. And the thesis statement is like a god or a sun in the sky, and it sort of rules. Everything else is subordinate to that. So basically, what hierarchical means is that some things are less important than others, and some things are more important than others. And that if you've made a good hierarchical structure in a certain kind of way, we understand that what is subordinate and is illustrative or exemplary or supportive of the big idea, if it is a big idea, or it could be a big, powerful image that is at the center or at the peak of the hierarchy. Okay? You cannot revise your own poems, and you cannot become a better poet without actually thinking about hierarchies. So you write a draft of a poem, and you type it out, and you look at it, and what you will know that the generative process is kind of a flow. You're trying to stay loose, and you're trying not to think too much, and you're just trying to get the material onto the page. But then you look at it, and you can see, oh, this is what the poem is about. And you could circle it. Or you say, oh, this image of blood here, this really is the powerful image, the dominant image of the poem. And then if you recognize the hierarchy of what the main idea is, or what the main narrative is, or what the main relationship is, you have 4 characters in the poem, but the poem is going to be about the relationship between 2 of those characters. In fact, you can't have equal relations in the poem between all 4 of the characters. Anyway, if you can't recognize what the hierarchy of your poem is, what the center is, what the most important moment is, you can't revise it. Because the whole presentation of the poem should be oriented to presenting that most advantageous moment, that most important moment, at its most advantageous timing and with its radiance. So you shouldn't have a ton of images in the poem which will be drawing energy away from the best image you ever made in your life as so far this month, or the more sophisticated and important thought in your poem. A lot of poems that you see in draft, in workshops, they have too many ideas in them, too many characters, they have too many images, and it's because the writer has not actually scrupulously applied the rules of hierarchy and then reorganized the poem and cut out a bunch of it so that its best moments were presented to their best advantage. So you can't even revise a poem without knowledge, without being able to impose hierarchies. Another way of saying this is that in a poem that is really, really well made, what we have is between the parts of the poem, we have the power of precise relationships. We understand exactly how this color down here in the lower left-hand corner of the canvas, exactly how it's talking to an image which is up at the beginning of the poem. And there aren't a bunch of 9 other images which are draining the relationship and the field of energy that's between those 2. In other words, the poem is organized so that the elements of the poem have precisely expressed relationships. They may be deeply intuitive, they may be full of unconscious knowledge, all kinds of things, and imagination. They may be wild, or they may be tamed, but they have precise relationships. So that's different than a poem that is basically drawing on the aesthetic of disorganization and the sort of rawness of a whole bunch of material just sort of thrown down on the page. That can have a certain kind of energetic quality to it, because it's kind of chaotic, and you think, wow, there's a lot going on here, but it does not have the artistic power or sophistication or refinement or the staying power in terms of holding its energy year after year after year. The poems that I love, I've read them 20, 30, 100 times, and every time I go back to them, the energy is still there and the revelation is still there, because they're so well made that the intelligence and the meaningfulness and resourcefulness of their precise relation stays there. One more thing about hierarchies is that in grammar, hierarchies are maintained by complex syntax. Complex syntax. It means that there are subordinate clauses which make sentences complex, which require us to hold certain kinds of things in suspension while we're waiting for the other meanings to arrive. And then when those other meanings arrive, we've been waiting for them to arrive, and then they arrive, and we have a sense of gratification as the jigsaw puzzle pieces go together. Now I'm going to read a short poem by the Russian woman poet Anna Akhmatova. And it's a poem that has a lot of emotional intensity, but it's got complex syntax too, and I hope you'll be able to hear it. It's set in Moscow or Leningrad, and it's called 21st Night, Monday, Silhouette of the Capitol in Darkness. The poem is really about romantic love, and it's about 15 lines long. 21st Night, Monday, Silhouette of the Capitol in Darkness. Some good for nothing. Who knows why? That's a parenthetical. Made up the tale that love exists on earth. What a great beginning. Some good for nothing. Who knows why? Made up the tale that love exists on earth. People believe it. Maybe from laziness or boredom, that's another parenthetical, and they live accordingly. They wait eagerly for meetings, they fear parting, and when they sing about love. But the secret reveals itself to some, and on them the silence settles down. I found this out by accident, and now it seems I'm sick all the time. Some good for nothing, who knows why? Now, you have to wait for the main clause, made up the tale that love exists on earth. So the subject is some good for nothing. The verb is made up. What got made up? The story, the fiction, the fairy tale that love exists on earth. Wow, that is an amazingly rich and large statement. And look how well said it is. Some good for nothing, some bastard 500 years ago told us a fairy tale, and we are still living according to what it told us. Some good for nothing, who knows why, made up the tale that love exists on earth. So that one sentence is an example of a hierarchical structure that exists in grammar. And if you don't know how to use grammar in a way that is both that direct but also that skillful, that it requires your reader to be fully engaged both intellectually and emotionally with the unfolding of the sentence, then you basically are probably a poet of the disorganized aesthetic, and you will never achieve the power of precise relations that a poem like this is capable of. A big poem made by a master. That's all.